heart of California's Sierra Nevada, Sequoia National Park rises like a cathedral of living giants. Here, ancient trees, some over 3,000 years old, stand silent, their massive trunks and shadowed groves shaping an otherworldly landscape. It's a place where the air carries the scent of pine and earth, and where human footsteps can vanish into the wilderness without a trace. In the summer of 1998, a 32-year-old hiker named Daniel Whitaker arrived at the park for what was meant to be a simple 2-day trip. Daniel was no novice. Friends described him as experienced, cautious, and deeply familiar with California's backcountry. On his second morning, he was last seen near the High Sierra Trail, heading toward the remote Kern Canyon area. The trail he chose is well marked in its early miles, but beyond a certain point, it winds into rugged, less traveled terrain. Rangers say that after about 8 miles, the forest grows denser, the air thinner, and the paths less certain. When Daniel failed to return, search teams were dispatched immediately. For over a week, helicopters scanned the ridgelines, canine units combed the valleys, and over 50 searchers worked in shifts. Yet, no trace of him was found. Not his backpack, not his clothing, not even a scrap of gear. Theories emerged quickly. Some speculated he'd fallen into one of the steep ravines that carve the park's interior. Others believed he may have wandered into one of the park's lesser-known cave systems, many of which remain unmapped and hazardous. There are also reports, though rarely spoken about officially, of sudden, unexplained changes in weather high in the mountains, thick fog rolling in without warning, disorienting even the most skilled hikers. What deepens the mystery is that Daniel's disappearance is not an isolated case. Park records and local accounts point to a small but notable number of vanishings in Sequoia over the past half-century, many under eerily similar conditions: experienced hikers, fair weather, sudden absence of any physical evidence. Today, the park continues to draw visitors from around the world, its beauty and grandeur undiminished. But somewhere within its vast expanse, a story remains unfinished. The giant sequoias stand as silent witnesses to an event no one saw, keeping their secrets in the stillness of their age-old shadows. And as the sun dips below the ridges and the forest floor grows dark, one can't help but wonder, did Daniel lose his way in the labyrinth of the wilderness? Or did the wilderness itself decide to keep him?
High in the northern reaches of Montana, where jagged peaks rise against an endless sky, lies Glacier National Park, a wilderness of sheer cliffs, crystal lakes, and trails that vanish into dense alpine forests. It is a place that feels untouched, ancient, and at times almost indifferent to the presence of man. In August of 2012, 54-year-old Robert Bob Winslow arrived at Glacier for what he told friends would be a solo, meditative retreat. A seasoned outdoorsman, Bob carried a light but carefully packed kit: maps, food rations, a small tent, and his camera. His plan was to hike along the Gunsight Pass Trail, a route celebrated for its sweeping views but notorious for sudden changes in weather. On his second day, he was spotted by another hiker at the eastern edge of Lake Ellen Wilson. According to that witness, Bob seemed calm, unhurried, and in good spirits. He mentioned he would be setting up camp nearby before continuing deeper into the backcountry. It was the last time anyone ever saw him. When Bob failed to check in with rangers as scheduled, a massive search began. Teams scoured the trail and surrounding valleys, aided by helicopters and thermal imaging. The terrain, however, was unforgiving. Narrow ledges crumbling into 1,000-foot drops, snowfields lingering even in late summer, and thick forest where visibility was reduced to mere feet. After 10 days, the search was suspended. Not a single piece of gear, no footprints, no sign of disturbance was ever found. What puzzled investigators most was the absence of any clear hazard in the area where Bob had last been seen. The trail near Lake Ellen Wilson, while remote, is not considered overly dangerous in fair weather. Some rangers quietly speculated that he may have ventured off-trail, lured by an unmarked path or hidden view. Others wondered if the park's unpredictable microclimates had swallowed him in a sudden, disorienting fog, a phenomenon known to roll in without warning, even on clear days. The mystery deepens when viewed alongside other unsolved cases in Glacier. Over the past century, the park has seen a handful of disappearances that remain unexplained, each involving experienced hikers, each ending without a trace. Today, as visitors walk the Gunsight Pass Trail, the mountains stand silent, the waters of Lake Ellen Wilson reflecting the same jagged skyline Bob once admired. But somewhere beyond those ridges, in the untouched folds of the wilderness, his story lingers, an unfinished chapter in the park's quiet, enduring enigma. And as the wind carries across the peaks, one question remains. In a place so vast and untamed, did Bob simply vanish into the wild or into something else entirely?
In the red rock heart of southern Utah, Zion National Park stretches upward in towering sandstone walls and narrow slot canyons carved over millions of years. Sunlight spills across sheer cliffs in shades of gold and crimson, while deep below, the Virgin River winds silently through the canyon floor. It is a place of immense beauty and sudden danger. In September of 2016, 34-year-old Megan Lewis arrived at Zion for a solo hiking trip. An avid traveler and accomplished trekker, she was no stranger to challenging terrain. On the morning of the 15th, she set out along the popular Angel's Landing Trail, intending to complete the climb before the heat of the day. Witnesses recall seeing her near Scout Lookout around 9:30 a.m., pausing to take photographs of the sweeping valley below. She appeared confident, relaxed, and entirely in control. But Megan never returned to her lodging that evening. By the next morning, park rangers had launched a full-scale search. Dozens of volunteers scoured the narrow ridgelines, while helicopters hovered over the cliffs, scanning for movement or color. The Angel's Landing Trail, famous for its breathtaking views, is also notorious for its perilous drop-offs, some over 1,000 feet straight down. It seemed likely that if she had slipped, evidence would be found quickly. Yet after 4 days, search teams found nothing. No gear, no clothing, not even a sign of disturbed rock or vegetation. In such a heavily trafficked area, her disappearance was baffling. Investigators broadened the search to the less traveled backcountry, combing through dry washes, side canyons, and remote ledges, but still, the trail went cold. Adding to the mystery, several hikers came forward later to report hearing faint calls for help that day, echoing through the canyon walls. Searchers investigated each location, but the sound seemed to shift, as if carried unpredictably by the wind. Zion's rugged topography holds countless hidden alcoves, fissures, and crevices, places a person could become trapped or concealed from view for years. Rangers also note that in the summer and early fall, sudden flash floods can sweep through the slot canyons, erasing all trace of what was there before.
The Grand Canyon is more than a landscape. It is a geological cathedral, carved over millions of years by the relentless flow of the Colorado River. Its sheer cliffs and labyrinth of side canyons stretch beyond sight, creating a maze that has drawn explorers, scientists, and adventurers for centuries. But in its vast beauty lies an unforgiving danger. Once you step into its depths, the canyon can swallow you whole. In November of 1934, 29-year-old Glenn Hyde and his wife Bessie embarked on a honeymoon adventure unlike any other. Their plan was to navigate the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in a homemade wooden boat. an ambitious journey even for seasoned river runners. Glenn, confident in his skills, hoped to set a record for the fastest trip by a newlywed couple. The early days of the expedition were promising. They were spotted by fellow boaters near the Bright Angel Trail, smiling and in good spirits. Witnesses later recalled Glenn telling them that if they could make it past the notorious lava falls, the rest of the journey would be easy. But after that encounter, no one ever saw them again. When they failed to arrive at their destination, a search began. On December 6th, their boat was discovered adrift below River Mile 237. It was fully intact, with supplies neatly stowed and no sign of damage, an unsettling detail as if they had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. Theories swirled. Some suggested that Glenn fell overboard while scouting rapids, with Bessie attempting a rescue. Others speculated they had argued and one met with foul play. A few even believed Bessie might have survived, disappearing into a new life under an assumed name, a theory fueled by later claims of women matching her description appearing in the Southwest. What keeps the mystery alive is the sheer absence of physical evidence. In a canyon known for claiming lives through falls, floods, and the power of the river, the hides left behind nothing. No bodies, no personal belongings along the banks, no trace at all. Today, as hikers peer down from the rim and rafters push off into the churning current, the story of Glenn and Bessie drifts like a shadow over the water. Their fate remains one of the Grand Canyon's oldest and most enduring mysteries. Somewhere in those twisting canyons, perhaps beneath layers of silt and time, the answer still waits, silent as the river that carried them away.
The Florida Everglades is a vast, shifting wilderness, a mosaic of slow-moving rivers, sawgrass marshes, and mangrove forests that stretch farther than the eye can see. Beneath its tranquil beauty lies an environment both delicate and treacherous, where predators glide silently through bark waters and the landscape changes with every tide. It is a place that can feel alive and watchful. In July of 1994, a family from Miami visited the Everglades for a weekend camping trip near the park's Shark Valley area. Among them was 9-year-old Michael Palmer, an energetic boy fascinated by wildlife and adventure. On the second afternoon, Michael was seen playing near the edge of a sawgrass prairie while his parents prepared lunch at the campsite. He wandered only a short distance, less than 50 yards according to witnesses, and then he was gone. At first, the family assumed he had followed a trail or chased after a bird, but when minutes turned into an hour, panic set in. Rangers were notified immediately, and by nightfall, more than 30 searchers were combing the area. Airboats skimmed across the marshes, helicopters circled overhead, and trained dogs worked the narrow paths between water and grass. The Everglades, however, is a master of concealment. The tall sawgrass can swallow a person from sight in seconds, and the wet, shifting terrain erases footprints almost instantly. Searchers found no clothing, no belongings, no disturbance in the brush, nothing to indicate where Michael had gone. Wildlife experts noted the presence of alligators and Burmese pythons in the region, though there was no direct evidence of an attack. Others pointed to the disorienting nature of the marsh, where even experienced guides can lose their bearings under the relentless sun and identical scenery. Some locals whispered about deep sinkholes hidden beneath the water's surface, natural traps that open without warning. The search lasted 5 days before it was called off. Michael's disappearance was ruled unresolved, and his case remains open to this day. For his family, the Everglades became not a place of beauty, but an endless question mark, a vast, breathing expanse that had taken their child without a sound. Even now, when the wind moves through the sawgrass and the sky darkens with summer storms, rangers speak quietly of Michael Palmer. His story lingers in the humid air,
A reminder that in the Everglades, distance is deceptive, and safety can vanish in a single step. Somewhere beyond the boardwalks and trails, the answer is still out there, hidden in the water, the grass, and the silence.